So if you were in the top 1%, an elite athlete,
Yeah.
right, playing basketball, why do they still need coaching? Why did you still need coaching? Why do the top 2% still need coaching? Because they're already bringing so many of the tactical things, the commitment, the toughness, the mindset, the discipline, the consistency. They're already bringing that.
Hmm?
Why do the top 1 and 2% need to be coached?
Well, that's how they got there. See, the thing is, so we look at that 80-20 principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of the inputs, right? So 20% of your inputs get you to an 80% level. So let's say your peak is 100%. You're at 80% already just from 20% of your inputs. So you got a lot of resources remaining and you're already at 80%. That last 20% requires 80% of your time. And that's where a coach comes in. So it's another reason why we talk about that top 2%. So you take somebody like Michael Jordan, he would be 80% of Michael Jordan without a coach. The last 20% is where his trainers and his coaches and advisors and the people he had around him, they help him get that last 20%, but 80% of his resources went into closing that last 20% gap. That's where all the extra work comes in. Most people can get to a good level, good enough, just by by following that 80-20 principle. They don't have to close that last 20% gap. You don't want to. You could be 80% at pretty much everything if you want to, but if you're going to be a legend, the type of person people talk about long after you stop doing the thing, then you got to close that last 20% gap. So that's what helps them actually get to that highest level, is getting that enrichment and that help that takes them even further. Because there's also the coaching that can take people from 0 to 80. That does exist. But I personally, those are not the people that I like working with. Is people ask me all the time, Dre, would you ever be a youth athlete coach? And I think I can get a job as a youth athlete coach today if I wanted one. I can start a training program teaching 15-year-olds how to play basketball today if I wanted to. I have a bunch of clients, but I just don't have the patience to work with those people. I want to work with people who are already playing the game at a high level and want to play it higher.
So you're a serious guy.
Guess you could say that.
Do you think this and how you're coaching people, it's about systems? You believe in the idea of systems?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you take a system and every human of these top 2% that you're coaching, can you plug them into the system and have equal outcomes?
I don't do it that way because that will require, that's kind of like a one size fits all approach. So everybody go into this system and you get this outcome. I think that each person has different needs. And especially when you're talking to people who are already at a high level. So let's look at it this way, Mark. So if I was working with a bunch of people who are at 0, let's say entrepreneurs just starting out. I have some people like that at different levels of things that I do. They're just starting out. So they don't even know how to build an email list, and they don't really understand what business they're in. They don't know how to put an offer together or build a sales funnel. Then yes, there's a one size fits all I can throw all of them into because they all need the basic fundamentals that they don't quite understand, even though you'd be surprised at how many of them think they understand it, right? Then on the other end though, for people who are already at the 80, 90% level and they're trying to go to a higher level, they have completely different needs. So I have clients who their needs have nothing to do with business or making money. Like I have clients who are in their careers, they'll say finance, and they're making $500,000-$600,000 a year. They don't come to me because they need me to help them make more money. They come to me because in the course of making all that money in their business, their home life is not where it needs to be. They don't have the same relationship with their wife. They're not spending as much time with their kids. They're not working out as much as they used to because they're working all the time and they're gaining weight. So they want me to help them put a system in place for disciplining themselves for that. I need to spend more time with my kid. How do I deal with this situation with my wife? How do I make sure I'm taking time to work out instead of going to the office? So I'm helping them with things that have nothing to do with what they're doing in business. Whereas on the other side, there are other people I work with and they're in that level too. They might be at the $300,000-$400,000 level, but they don't feel like they are maximizing what they could do in business. They want to get better at generating more leads and getting the right type of prospects and cutting off the bottom 80% of their clientele and focusing on the top 20% of their clientele. So it can be it's much more customized when you're dealing with people who are at that higher level because they all need different things for different reasons. Whereas the lower level people, they all need the basic fundamentals that they don't yet have and they have not yet applied.
Do you think that human beings, I'm putting me and you in, all of us, not just people that are listening today or that we're engaging with,
right?
Would you say that we have a hard time doing the so-called hard things?
A hard time doing the hard things. I would say yes. And at the same time, a lot of people don't even know what the hard things are. I think many people have a misread on what the hard things are. They think the hard thing is something over here when the hard thing is actually something over here. And one of the biggest things that coaching does, and one of the biggest tools that a good coach has, is the ability to ask the right questions. See, my job as a coach is not to give people all the answers. My job isn't just give you the answers, because if all you needed was answers, you could go to Chat GPT or Google. They can give you more answers faster than I could. Right. My job is to provide the right questions, because anybody who uses AI software, you know that the key to using AI software is what? The prompts, right? Is the question. Right? If you put the wrong question in there, you're not going to get the right answer. So my job as a coach is to help people see the right question. And where insight comes from in life, Mark, is from asking a better quality question, is not from having all the answers. And usually the best insights in life come from questions that you can't answer. But because you can't answer the question, it requires you to think differently than the way you normally think. And that's where the breakthroughs come from. And the challenge for many people, especially people who are not at that top 80% level or 2% level, the people who are at the lower levels, is that they only do things for which they know the answer, or they only ask themselves questions that they are aware of. And those questions are what got you to where you are. So if you're going to go to a further place, you got to ask yourself a completely different set of questions. And usually those questions are not going to come from your brain, because your brain only knows what it knows. This is why people need to invest in coaching and masterminds and get around other high-level people, because they're asking themselves questions that you have never considered. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what's the most important question?
That's a great question. It depends. It depends on who the person is and what their situation is. So once I get to know people, then I start asking them the question. I see what their situation is, and it can be very different. There's no one question that applies to everybody.
So it's not the old why.
It can be why, but it depends on what I'm asking why to, because then it can branch out in 1,000 different directions.
Have you found that your approach to roadmap in reverse, have you found that that's a really good system and way to help people figure that out?
Yes, it is. And, all it is just breaking down where somebody wants to be and working backwards from where they want to be to where they are right now, so we can put together a plan, a roadmap. So just putting a plan together for getting the thing done. And again, as I said, coaching, a lot of it is just asking questions that people just simply haven't considered, because people get so deep into their own heads of what they're doing that they never take a step back and kind of look at the situation more plainly. And this is just a human thing, because it's easier for us to look at somebody else's situation and break it down than it is to look at our own situation objectively and dispassionately and break it down. So that's really what I do as a coach.
So this is simple for you.
It's simple for me, yes. I think it's simple for a lot of coaches when they're looking at somebody else's situation to break it down, at least the people who you work with, because the only reason they're coming to you because you can see something that they can't see.
Why do you think it seems so simple to you? Do you think you approach your own life? Are you a good coach for you? Are your own unlocks for you simple, or do you need that as well? Do you need that coach?
I think everybody needs a coach. I think some people are better at self-assessment than others. I think most people who are quality coaches of other people, they can probably assess their own issues maybe at a little bit further than other people can. So let's just say if assessing yourself is a scale of 0 to 100, I could assess myself maybe to an 85, whereas average person might only be able to go to a 50, right? So I can still go a little bit further than the average person can, but that last 15%, I still get insights from other people as well. So I still read books. I still go to conferences. I still invest in coaching. I still do those things, looking for that last 15% that I haven't gotten myself, whereas somebody else, they might need a whole 45%.
What do you attribute the difference in you being able to do it at an 85% level and someone else 40%? What do you attribute that difference that you've made up to get to 85%?
Personally, is just my ability to look at things dispassionately and objectively. And no human being is completely objective, but from my conversations, just my lived life experience, just talking to human beings, even people who I consider to be very smart, I look at things a lot more objectively than the average person. Like I can look at somebody who I like and admire and I'm a fan of, and I can still offer an objective, logical criticism of them. And these days, people look at that as hate, and a lot of people can't take that, but I can do that. I can criticize somebody who I like, because I can look at things objectively. I don't look at things like a fan or a idolizer or worshiper of somebody, like let's say an athlete or something like that. This happens on social media all the time. When I decide to engage, I get called a hater of somebody, and I'm like, I was a fan of them before you even knew who they were, right? But I can still criticize them.